Good morning, everybody. I think we're going to try to get started. Well, we're happy to see and not surprised, to see such a wonderful group of people coming to hear this conference. And we're sorry for all of the inconvenience of shifting between rooms. But needless to say, for us, the undergraduates, our students, are the most important. It's for them that we're creating this programming. So we thank you for your consideration and your understanding. So I think we've been doing this conference since 2008, after the inauguration of President Obama. Okay. I think it's fair to say that in the arc of these last three elections that we have discussed, this is by far the most unexpected, the most difficult to have predicted, and most surprising, and therefore maybe the most interesting and the most important to discuss. The election has confounded most expectations, though maybe not so unexpected in the context of current global politics and trends. So if read in the context of the equally surprising result in Brexit, the win of the Leave voters, or next month in Italy, we will have a referendum here on which the Prime Minister has staked his prime ministership. He's vowed to leave office less frequently now, making that representation if he was to win. Right-leaning parties in election contests throughout Europe were encouraged by the affirmation of an anti-globalization, anti-migrant, xenophobic message. So on Wednesday morning, here at NYU Florence, students, I think, were noticeably affected by the results of the election. You'll notice I'm trying to use very cautious words, but I think they were genuinely shocked. They can speak for themselves, and strangely and uncharacteristically, those to whom I spoke expressed a sense of fear. Fear is reasonable, I think. I think it's a product of a sense of confronting the unknown, of having experienced a campaign in which perhaps there was more noise than light. The campaign was characterized by vitriol, by the worst sorts of fears and hatreds were given voice and power. The widening polarization of Americans on issues may be expected, but the campaign got very personal. Our president-elect Trump has never run for office. His statements on policy were often vague. And he ran as an outsider, as somebody who promised to shake up Washington, but offering little in the way, little with which we could gain an understanding of what his administration will look like. So it's my hope that today and tomorrow we can help allay some fears by trying to bring more light to the discussion, maybe. As we begin this discussion, I want to quote part of President Obama's statement on Wednesday. He underscored the need to, quote, go forward with a presumption of good faith in our fellow citizens, because that presumption of good faith is essential to a vibrant and functioning democracy. That's also the spirit of this conversation, and I want to thank all of the panelists who have always come together here at Pietra over the course of many years in good faith, truly a model for our students of a reasoned discussion. And I hope that we will have that discussion over the next 2 days. With our panelists, we'll try to understand what happened, what is ahead for both political parties, and what we might expect in the first days of the Trump administration. Before I leave the podium, I want to thank my friend and colleague Bob Schramm, with whom we designed this series. Teaching obligations prevented him from coming today, and we hope to see him next year. Very soon after the 2008 conference, Steve McMahon entered into our planning. He has now taken over for Bob. He's a delight to work for. There he is. over in the corner. Delight to work with. A friend, I've learned a lot from him, and I thank you sincerely for your expertise in bringing together this group of people. So, now I have the great pleasure of introducing the United States Ambassador to Italy, John Phillips. He's a lawyer by training. I gave this introduction a few minutes ago. He met with some students, but a lawyer by training. Before becoming an ambassador, he worked in litigation, public interest litigation, on the environment, civil rights, consumer protection, corporate fraud, and ultimately in whistleblower litigation. He's been a great ambassador, a great friend to New York University while you've been here. We will miss you, but you're not gone yet. So thank you for coming and offering us some welcome comments.
Well, thank you, Ellyn. It's always good to be back to NYU and La Pietra. I think I've been here for 3 out of the 4 programs that you've had, and my wife has always been an invitee and a panelist here, and she will be that again today. These are interesting times to be the United States ambassador in Europe. Especially during this past year, and this election year, and especially up and through this last week. I just had, I was with a gathering of 16 ambassadors, United States ambassadors, to the European countries. We just met up through yesterday. We had planned this some months in advance. We were expecting more celebratory mood, but it was quite a different mood. And we had a chance to compare notes about our own experiences in our host countries, reaction of people before, just generally toward the United States, and the lead up to the election. And I can tell you it was a very sobering gathering. It was very good for us all to be together. Of course, we're all Obama appointees. You know, America has this system, unlike most countries, where about 1/3 of the ambassadors are political appointees, someone who's not from foreign service but serves for typically 1 term at the pleasure of the president. Usually someone who has a relationship with the president is chosen by the president. So these are people all who knew the president quite well. And I think our experience over the past really 6 months, this election cycle, has been similar. The questions we get day in and day out from all Italians, in my case, what is happening to America? They are shocked and struck, and they're very informed, by the way. They read the press stories. They read what candidates say. They follow even the primary elections in the United States, and they just couldn't believe that a party would select someone like Donald Trump to be their nominee, and they're always looking for some reassurance from us that the voters, when they speak, will understand the choices before them and they would choose widely. But of course, Tuesday night came. I had 1,200 people in Rome turning out. Everybody everywhere was expecting a very different result, and everybody asking for me reassurances. This is going to be all right, isn't it? And of course, I couldn't offer such reassurance because, especially having heard some disquieting news early in the evening. But what it does is really undercut America's leadership, America's perception. You know, we have been for decades and decades post-World War II in a strong leadership position for Europe. They look to us for support, for guidance, from the Marshall Plan forward, and we've always provided it. So this is a shock to them, and especially when they look at positions that we all endorsed and taken together, from global warming and the Treaty on Global Warming, or the Agreement on Global Warming, the future of NATO. What is the role of NATO, our backbone of our whole security system, in light of comments made? Now, you know, NATO is a pretty hard structure to change, so despite what comments might be made, NATO will continue to be the backbone. But is the United States not going to support countries that don't pay 2% of their GDP in support of defense? What exactly will be the relationship with Russia and with Mr. Putin? You know, our position is Mr. Putin is a very troublesome, player on the international scene. And I can tell you just from being here in Italy and all the ambassadors, we have so much evidence of the very effective, powerful propaganda, the lies, the destabilizing efforts undertaken by Russia through its own, not only its own propaganda, but its own actions. And what will be America's role and relationship with Mr. Putin, the Iran nuclear deal, being described by Mr. Trump as one of the worst deals ever in history. Is that going to be abrogated now, one-sided by the United States? Is Iran going to be able to get its nuclear weapon inside of a year? Things like the anti-ISIL coalition that's worked very well. We have 60 nations, that America's the leading force, and organizing that, coordinating that, and I can tell you, being informed and involved in those efforts, that things are going well. Will we continue on that steady course or not? Of course, that's what you'll be discussing here today. How did this happen strategically? What was behind the voters? What does this all mean? And for me, the question presented is, with President Obama at an enormously high popularity rate in Europe, you know, he's running 75 to 85% all over Europe. People have the enormous admiration for President Obama, what kind of president he's been, and it's a great respect for all that he's been able to accomplish. And they say to me and to the other ambassadors very often, you are so fortunate to have someone of such strong leadership qualities that has led America in the right direction. I know when he was here a couple years ago, staying with us in Washington, in Rome, for a visit, I said, what's the problem here? You know, you have 80% approval rating in the United States, and there's only, or in Italy, and it's only 40% in the United States. He said, I know I could be president of Europe if I had. So maybe he'll come back here, he'd be welcome. But the real question is, with President Obama at a 55% popularity, now increased substantially and increasing, an economy that is among the strongest in the world, an unemployment rate now less than half of what it was when he took over the whole catastrophic global meltdown, creation of 15.5 million new jobs, real growth in income that's accelerating, a GDP pretty much twice what it is of the average developed country. Why would the American voters so drastically shift gears and empower a party which has opposed pretty much everything that he has offered, including, for example, infrastructure, $1 trillion infrastructure program, very much like what is being proposed now? And the one reason it was proposed is because the name on it was President Obama. This was earlier. And a party that was threatening shutting down the government and defaulting on our loan. Why would there be such a drastic shift, and why would everybody read it wrong? I want to read you something from a good friend of ours that he sent out widely, from Peter Hart, I think gives the best explanation. And I'm sure it'll be part of your discussion today, but I think it really says better than what I could say. Peter Hart has been running these focus groups around America now for several years, for NBC and for Wall Street Journal. And he's someone who supports, is a Democrat, but they've done it together with Republicans. And I know he's been very worried for a long time, a year and a half, when we get together about about the prospects, especially for the prospects for Hillary Clinton. But here's what they have put out right after the election. Three forces collided to elect Donald Trump president of the United States. First, Hillary Clinton was a deeply flawed candidate. Second, Mr. Trump, a brilliant manipulator of broadcast media outlets, benefited from copious amounts of free airtime. Third is the element of the 2016 election that pundits consistently underestimated. A large sector of our society is deeply, viscerally angry. And what never happened, Hillary Clinton never dealt with the integrity issues that surveys consistently found voters have held about her. She needed to display character, not just of determination or toughness, but also something that helped middle Americans know that she was on the side of the people, not the Wall Street or Washington establishments. In the end, this was an election of fear. Mr. Trump's message was the fear of what has been happening to this country, and Mrs. Clinton's message focused on the fear of Donald Trump. This election ends where elections always do, with the voters. The contest was more about viewers of Duck Dynasty than Saturday Night Live. Voters are angry at the failure of elected officials in Washington to listen to them and act. They are angry that the country can't secure its borders. They are angry about a war on terrorism that has dragged on for more than a decade and has shown more signs of defeat than victory. They are angry at the arrogance of the rich and well-educated who don't seem to know, much less care, that working people's standard of living has been declining for a generation. They are angry at the media, at journalists. They think, look, and sound too smug, too certain, too aloof. They are angry at the new economy that trumpets apps and functionality and brags about the costs, red jobs, that are being eliminated. They are angry about being mocked and vilified as rubes, racists, and deplorables. They are white-hot angry that their children don't have reasonable prospects for advancement. Tuesday, they didn't vote for Donald Trump so much as they voted against every institution that has turned its back on the working people. Political analysts thought this race was about insults, sexual harassment, non-disclosure of tax returns, boorish behavior. Many were sure this would translate into an easy win for Mrs. Clinton. They listened to the wrong voices from the beginning. This election was about a large segment of the electorate wanting a way to demonstrate deep frustration with the country's direction. They did this in the primaries by voting for Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, protest candidates. The message was about the hollowing out of the middle America. The more that Mr. Trump was insulting and politically incorrect, the more his backers supported him. This election was the clearest possible signal to every institution in the United States that average person expects and is demanding a seat at the table. The folks who led this revolution are foreign to Washington, Los Angeles, and New York. They don't go to Starbucks, take their kids to college tours, or watch NPR. They shop at Walmart, dine at McDonald's, and care more about high school sports than pro games. Their incomes are declining, and they have no retirement funds. They think their parents and grandparents built this country, and Tuesday night they screamed that they want this country back. Well, I think that's pretty insightful. When you look at what's happened, the hauling out of the middle class, we saw it happening. It wasn't like it was mysterious, but Democrats, Republicans alike, didn't do anything to figure out what to do with the declining fortunes and futures of so many in the middle class. The loss of blue-collar, middle-class jobs has been a steady and growing problem for over 30 years, and no one, again, not the Democrats or Republicans, on a whole segment of people who are dealing with this. The 24 to 26-hour jobs where the automobile industry steals are gone, replaced by $12 Target, Walmart jobs. They can't make ends meet. This has been happening. It's been well documented. The jobs lost were blamed on trade agreements. They had some very limited effect, but it's really automation, technology, robotics. Focus on gains and productivity was all about how to reduce labor inputs. Here's one fact, one figure. In 1985, we have increased, to probably your surprise, manufacturing output 100% since 1985. But counting that 100% increase, we are doing it with 1/3 of the jobs that you would otherwise previously have. I just know that from personal experience. Recently I was at an auto plant down in Basilicata, Fiat Chrysler plant, probably one of the most modern in the world. Decades ago, I was at a plant in Detroit where the mile-long miracle that Henry Ford had created started with molten steel at one end, cars at the other end, 3 shifts round the clock, people everywhere. This plant in Malfi was without people. It was all robotics, everything. That's where the jobs are gone. Today, I think in steel production per tonnage, you can do it with 90% fewer people. That's happened. That's going to continue to happen. And those people who are left behind are the angry ones here. But here's the real issue in the future, I'll mention last, is this is going to continue and accelerate. The estimated loss of jobs because of automation, because of now coming artificial intelligence, is going to be staggering. For driverless cars and trucks, for example, 1.2 million truck drivers in America. Those jobs are going to be gone in 5 to 6 years, much sooner than we think. You save 80% of your insurance costs. You don't have to pay pensions. Health costs, they're more reliable. Of course they're going to go that way. So what happens to those 1.2 million Americans and all their associated family members? In artificial intelligence, if you read the reports and studies that say in 15 to 20 years, over 40% of the thinking jobs will be eliminated because of artificial intelligence. And it's an amazing development area. What's going to happen to the people who work in the banks, who work in all the thinking jobs that we have in 15 years and 20 years when they have no jobs? That's the real political issue that has to be addressed, because there'll be more wealth creation, there'll be more outputs, fewer inputs, meaning fewer labor. Where does that wealth go? And what are we going to do about people who desperately want to have a meaningful job? We're going to have to think about that as society addresses this going forward. It's a serious issue. We can't defer it for 10 years and 15 years. This, to me, will be this is a wake-up call for what we're going to be experiencing over the next 10, 15 years, and you young people especially. This is going to be front and center, an issue you're going to have to deal with. So that's some of my observations. Thanks.
And this morning, on the first time for one of our political conferences, we're delighted that the mayor of the city of Florence has joined us, himself busy in the referendum campaign, taking time out from his work to come and greet all of you today. Though in Florence, of course, he needs no introduction for the benefit of you and for the people who are watching in our live stream. Dario Nardella became the mayor of Florence in May of 2014. He began his political career 10 years earlier in 2004 when he was elected to the city council of Florence, a member of the Democratic Party. He then served as deputy mayor and a member of the Chamber of Deputies, and is a close ally of the Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. By training, he is both a concert violinist and a lawyer, a wonderful combination. At NYU Florence, we're lucky to have a wonderful relationship with the city. That relationship allows for our students a richer, more deep integration into the community, and we're very grateful to the mayor and his team for this great relationship. So welcome.
Thank you, Ellyn. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good morning. I'm particularly happy to welcome you in Florence, in the beautiful venue of a prestigious New York University. I must say I'm really pleased to have the honor to open with the ambassador this conference together with the highest representative of USA in Italy, His Excellency the Ambassador John Phillips, to whom I bid my most heartfelt welcome. The conference Inside American Politics is an annual appointment which offers the great opportunity to analyze what is going on inside the most important country of the world. It is a very interesting dialogue on the American political situation. Inside American Politics represents an important appointment for everyone: economic and political analysts, civil servants, and more importantly, it is a significant moment for the young generation, like you, who can actively participate in the debate about the current political events. I want to give a special thanks to the director of New York University, Ellyn Toscano, my friend who invited me to open this appointment. Ellyn does a splendid job and gives an effective contribute to maintain at a maximum level the quality of the cultural offer of Florence. I do want to underline that the American students here in their detached university branches represent a fundamental reality. A recent study focused on the economic impact of the presence of this particular form of intellectual tourism, linked particularly to our cultural and artistic heritage, gave me interesting data. The figures show clearly the dimension of this situation. In Tuscany region, as you know, there are more than 50 between universities and American schools, which every year are attended by more than 5,000 students. The report highlights that at the end of the semester, 80% of them say that they want to come back in Tuscany and Florence especially. The relations of friendship and collaboration between Tuscany, with Florence standing out, and the United States, founded on a common heritage of a civilization, values, interests, and bonds that in recent decades have been developing and strengthening, are supplied by respect and mutual trust. The presence of the American friends represents one of the cultural and social profiles of Florence that I truly appreciate. I'm interested to know today what will be the result of the analysis on the recent American elections that will come out at the end of this conference. I do not want to give a personal opinion on the electoral results because American people voted and I respect people's will, of course. But I have to say that we was very surprised and impressed by this American vote. For example, I told to the Mr. Ambassador before to come here that 1 week before the vote, the Italian poll about the Italian opinion on the presidential election gave us 70% of Italians convinced about the Hillary Clinton victory. So for us in Italy and Europe was a very big surprise. And now I would like to say, first of all, that we are all grateful to President Obama for sharing with us the same values, the same strategy about a global future. And as Mr. Ambassador told us today, we know that President Obama worked a lot to increase relations between United States and Europe. Also because, as we know, Europe and the United States has the same values about freedom, global vision, about cultural tradition, about civil rights, about environmental challenges, and many other big challenges. So now we are very curious to know by your hosts, dear Ellyn, what happened in the United States in these days. And also the the next steps about the presidential strategy in order of the big challenges we have in the world. For example, the relations between Europe and the United States, and as Mr. Ambassador told us, the relations with Russia and with China, so these three big players we have in the world. Anyway, I do believe that the important thing, what really matters now, is that Florence wants to keep working to foster many beautiful projects of collaboration with New York University, but I'm convinced that we have to continue to increase relations between Europe and United States. Because these two big countries are the only countries we have now in the world very strongly concentrated on civil challenges and many other big missions. I think that the history of Florence and the history of relationship between Europe and United States, between American culture and Florentine culture, are much more stronger than any presidential government. And for this reason, I believe on this historical collaboration. We are coming from a very big tradition of this relationship. And I hope that the new American president, Mr. Trump, will continue to keep these relations also with a changement in strategy, in policy. But the mission is the same, how to continue and to develop, to increase this link, this relation between Europe and the United States. Let me conclude by congratulating once again for this interesting initiative and by wishing you all a good and fruitful stay in Florence. Thank you very much.